Hardin County. Hardin County.
Welcome to Hardin Local. My name is Phil Tall. Today is the Hardin Local Election Marathon. We have 13 candidate interviews back to back over the next 7 hours, live on Facebook and YouTube, also Instagram. We're going from 1 p.m. straight through about 8 p.m., one continuous stream, every candidate getting the same questions in the same order per race. No surprises. Kicking us off, joined by Michael Faris, who is running for the Republic primary for United States Senate, Kentucky's first open Senate seat since well, it's not the Kentucky's first Senate open seat, but this seat hasn't been open since 1984 after Mitch McConnell won that race. Big thank you up front to our two sponsors making this marathon possible, the Plumbing Doctor and Omni Design Group, both Hardin County businesses. More on both of them in a few. Mike, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Phil, for inviting us to join your space. I know you've got quite the voice here in Hardin County, and I appreciate the platform and the opportunity to speak to you and directly to the people.
Great. Well, you know the rules. Every candidate in your race gets the same questions, same order, same time. So let's dig in. We know you're running for U.S. Senate. Why did you decide this office specifically?
Well, actually, to keep a long story short, one of my biggest campaign agendas is this removal of these rogue judges at the federal level. Obviously, we have kind of a judiciary that doesn't appear to be working directly for the people of this nation, and of course, some of that can be seen through what the Kentucky Senate is doing now, or trying to do, by getting rid of a couple of judges that have made bad decisions as judicial players, right? So, and then when the Senate has tried, or the House has tried to impeach them, basically the Supreme Court's now saying, well, you don't even have the right, which is false, because it's enshrined in not only our state constitution, but the federal constitution as well. So that's what brings me in the race, is basically focusing on that judiciary and making sure that we can get the power of those decisions kind of back to the people and more aligned with the constitution of this country.
All right. Was there anything that happened in your life that led you to run?
Well, there's a plethora of it. I'm not sure we have enough time here today to speak on a lot of those matters.
We got 90 seconds to give us
I'll give you a quick rundown.
Summary.
So me personally, born in Corydon, Indiana in 1986, so 2 years after Mitch McConnell takes his seat, 2.5 months old, brought across the bridge to Meade County. That's how I became a Kentuckian, and abandoned there with a good Christian farming family in Sonora, Kentucky. From 2.5 months old till I was 3, I was their foster baby, the only one they ever took in. They raised over 275 foster children and 3 of their own biological children. But at 3 years old, the state had given me back to the biological mother. So from 3 to 12, I lived in the southern Indiana area, where I would live through what I consider to be a living hell. So at 12, through my suggestion, I told, kind of my probation officers at the time, hey, let's carve a path back to that family in Sonora, and I'll be a good boy again, right? So I didn't have structure. I didn't have guidance at those younger ages. But as soon as Alan Laverne Fry out of Sonora adopted me, enrolled me into East Hardin, never got into another lick of trouble again, working that farm of 120 acres of tobacco and hay until I would join the Air Force at 18. And so for the last 20 years, I've been in aviation. I own a small helicopter maintenance business that focuses primarily on restoration and servicing of Black Hawk helicopters globally. We have customers anywhere from Texas west to California, in Australia, and also in Canada. So, like I said, a plethora of things that we could discuss, but that is a short recap to kind of give you that idea that you asked.
All right. What in your background most prepares you for being a senator?
Well, most notably during COVID, obviously we've seen that the federal judiciary and the federal government had kind of went rogue against the citizen, forcing a lot of unconstitutional mandates upon the people. And in my specific matters, that dealt directly with the federal transportation mask mandate, which is where they kind of force people to wear masks in the transportation industry. Well, as a guy who's been in aviation, look, I know the rules. I've studied them. I've been in it for a long time, spending 4 of my years in commercial aviation. I didn't realize this until COVID came about, but I simply cannot wear a mask for 4 hours every day due to childhood trauma and things that happened during my life as an adolescent. So I did all of the appropriate legal things and went and got the exemption from a triple board certified neurologist in New Jersey. Gave it to the TSA, gave it to the airlines. Both of them broke the law. So for the last 5, 6 years, I've been suing the TSA, the CDC, and 5 major airlines pro se without counsel because I could not find an attorney in the state or in the nation that would hear me out, take the case. So look, I've been studying the federal judiciary. I've been studying these laws. I've been studying how the Senate works and how our government has failed us time and time again. And we've been pretty successful in the CDC case. It's still ongoing. It may go to the appeals court, but we'll see hopefully here within the next month or two kind of how that's going to iron out. But it is my opinion that, look, we need more citizen legislators, people who are regular, everyday, blue collar folks that are out here making sure that the economy lives and thrives and breathes. And right now, we're just not seeing that. It seems like every one of these politicians end up being a lawyer or some lobbyist prior to their entry into office. And there's just not any sound mind of how to actually interact with the people and do what's best for them and listen to them and be accessible to them and do what the founding fathers had intentionally designed our government to work. So, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm fighting for. It's directly for the people. And hopefully we can gain that additional support between now and May 19th.
All right. If voters only remember one thing about why they should vote for you, what is that one thing?
Well, I would say simply life experience, and I'm not a political insider. I'm completely an outsider to politics in general, and I think that that's refreshing to some people.
All right. Quick break. Today's election coverage is brought to you in part by The Plumbing Doctor, a family-owned Hardin County plumbing company run by Glenn and Tracy Downs right here in Elizabethtown. Over 20 years serving E-Town, Radcliffe, Fort Knox, and Hodgenville. Fully licensed and insured, 24/7 emergency service, and a 10% labor discount for military, first responders, and seniors. Look, showing up to vote on May 19th is one way you can take care of your community. Another way is calling your neighbor who owns a plumbing company when your water heater goes out. When your pipes go, call local. Call 765-PLUM. That's 765-PLUM. The Plumbing Doctor, experienced, reliable, and affordable. All right, Mike, the next question. Say you do win. First 90 days, what's the first concrete thing you do in office? 60 seconds on this.
Well, honestly, look, this is going to be a freshman senator. You're not going to have a lot of power coming out of the gate. I think much of the 90 days is going to be getting in there, finding out who actually is America First, who is the washed up politician, and who the friendlies are. And, you're going to have to be able to create alliances in this thing in some nature. Hopefully that becomes easier. As we're seeing across the nation, there's a lot of good, regular, everyday folks stepping up to serve their people, not only from the House side, but the Senate side as well. You're seeing it all over X and Facebook. And of course, the national media is not going to bring light to that subject, but there's a movement growing. So if some of those folks are successful in their races and we're successful here in Kentucky in this pivotal race to replace a guy who's been there for 42 years, that makes that a lot easier, right? So as far as the first 90 days, I don't like to make any promises like that. I think that's one of those tactics that have been gone on far too long. I think the focus should be on the constituent services, which is largely what this job was designed to do, was to be kind of the conduit directly to the people in Kentucky for good legislation, and then of course being the voice and vote to block bad legislation that does them no good. So my promise here in the first 90 days: remain accessible, keep my head on a swivel, make sure I'm paying attention to the issues that matter to Kentuckians, and do my best to advance their agenda in D.C. for the people of the great Commonwealth of Kentucky.
All right. Is your campaign self-funded, donor-funded, or a mix? And then also, where should voters go to learn more about your campaign?
So originally, we're 100% political outsiders. We received no endorsements from any politician in this race at all. Most of our endorsements come directly from the people within the community. And so initially, when we started out, we knew we were going to have to throw some money at this thing. So largely self-funded in the beginning, buying basically consumeristic type materials between door knockers and mailers and shirts and hats and different things with our agenda on them, and just getting people to know us and having that accessibility right on that card. And then, of course, about 6.5, 7 months in, we've seen a huge explosion of support from direct grassroots people in the state who then began to donate, trying to get us over that kind of $100,000 threshold that KET was leveraging against being able to get on a debate stage. No different than our own party in Jefferson County excluding us from the first debate on the WDRB coverage, which, in my opinion, all three of them bombed. But so it's really now at this point it is donor funded. We've taken one endorsement from a political action committee, 100% American based, and ran political action committee to try to win this race. And so most of our donations were somewhere around 80,000 at this point. I think we're somewhere around the $10,000 to $11,000 mark throwing money in the beginning, and the other 65 to 68 wherever we are naturally at this moment are between that one pack at $1,000, and then the rest of it directly contributed from the hardworking people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
All right. And what's your campaign website?
So the website is farisforsenate.com. And so it's FARIS, one R. A lot of people like to add an extra one in there. Farisforsenate.com. And then, of course,
the number 4 or just FOR?
FOR, yeah.
Okay.
And of course, in the tabs, you can find all of our socials through direct links of those icons per social platform.
So this is it right here, right? Farisforsenate.com. I just put it on the screen. I don't know if you can see it.
I can't see your screen.
Okay.
But,
gotcha. Cool.
If it's got a helicopter there and I'm standing there holding a long line in front of it, that's the one.
All right. One more break to pay the bills. Before we get into the U.S. Senate specific questions, a big thank you to our second sponsor today, Omni Design Group. Omni is a second generation builder based right here in Elizabethtown. Josh Branningham and Corey Jewell, born and raised in Hardin County with deep family and business roots in the county. They handle new construction and remodeling across residential and light commercial, any size home, any size reno. No project is too big, no renovation is too small, and no idea is too out of the ordinary. They're the team that built the first storage container commercial structure in Hardin County over at Heartland Mini Golf. If you got to build a remodel or an outside the box project rattling around inside your head, call or text Corey at Omni Design Group, 270-769-8339. That's 270-769-8339. Corey at Omni Design Group, locally owned, locally built, custom thinking. All right, Mike, let's get into these race specific questions. You'll have 2 minutes per question. And so we'll just go for that. For the first time since 1984, Kentucky has this Senate seat open. Mitch McConnell held it for 42 years. Whoever wins this seat takes a 6-year term representing the entire Commonwealth in Washington. What makes you the right person for this seat at this moment? And what would you do differently than the senator you're replacing?
Well, that's a good question. Interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know that McConnell actually beat out a Hardin County resident when he won that race in 84 against Dee Huddleston, who was a Democrat at the time, and Kentucky was largely Democrat. And now it's obviously switched. Kind of the Republican Party has the base there in Kentucky, state where Trump won by 30 points. So when we talk about what's different, well, there's a clear visual difference between me and Mitch McConnell. And of course, how we carry ourselves. Look, I think Mitch McConnell was very much a statesman in the beginning of his terms, while he worked his way up to the U.S. Senate. But I just think that when you have a hold of that power for so long, it becomes to be like a really corrupt thing. You start learning how to game the system, find the loopholes, and then you end up heisting the American taxpayer. So what I want to say is, basically, again, being accessible to the people of Kentucky. I think that most of our federal legislators have kind of lost touch with what's going on at home. And we're seeing now challenges to all these races nationwide. And I think those are good things, because what does that do? That humbles us. It grounds us in the fact that, hey, at the end of the day, we do have to seek the approval of the constituency. So the focus needs to be shifted on that constituency-based survey. You're there to represent them. They bring issues to you, whether it be from any of the 3-letter agencies to VA benefits, to most of these federal programs that take care of disaster relief and stuff like that. So it's about making sure the pressure is on those entities to serve the people, that we're not actually over-surveilling them without warrants. We aren't, basically injecting the federal government into individual people's lives every day for absolutely no reason at all. And just remaining humble, being a regular person, almost taking the Hollywood out of politics because it's just really gotten to where it's too celebratory in a sense. I mean, these people go up there, having a certain amount of, let's call it net worth. And then by the time that they even get close to leaving, they're multimillionaires. And so this job, garners $174,000 a year on payroll. And so how do we have representatives going to DC to become ultra wealthy in a position that already makes probably more than the average administrative salary in the nation? So it's just about remaining humble, staying true to the people. Okay, no worries.
You can wrap it up if you want to, or we'll just
all
go
good.
on.
Just remaining true to the people, and staying humble.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, next question has to do with energy transitions in coal communities. Eastern Kentucky community has been hit hard by plant closures and depopulation. While at the same time, they've been 3 major scale solar, I don't like to call them solar farms, I like to call them solar plants, came online in Kentucky in 2020. As a U.S. Senator, how do you think federal policy should balance support for coal workers and the communities they've built with the energy transitions that already are happening on the ground?
Well, with that question, we kind of have to take a step back and look at a bigger picture here when it comes to coal, right? So all these bankers and company men and these federal legislators come through Eastern Kentucky and took all of the easily accessible coal, made their big buck, left all the residents with black lung, and then just ditched them out there and are trying to basically put on, base landfills and solar plants and whatever else to just basically, crap on Eastern Kentuckians. I mean, it's one of the most important things in our state right now is the devastation that's going on over there, and the fact that fed them a bunch of pain pills and then just said, "Hey, deal with the trouble." Well, look who made out on that. The coal companies made out on it. All the company men, the bankers, and everything. They took all the resources from those people and they fled east to West Virginia. There's still coal in Kentucky. The problem is they've Swiss cheesed all that landscape, and it's kind of hard to go back in there and get the rest of the coal that exists. So it's interesting to me that, election cycle after election cycle, these politicians go back in to Eastern Kentucky promising these coal jobs, but there's never a viable solution of how they're going to do it because what have they done? They allowed the infrastructure to crumble. So if you want to go back in there and get the coal, you're going to have to topple the mountains, right? Get the remaining coal out, spend a little bit more time, make a little bit less profit. And that's if Eastern Kentuckians are even at this point still interested in driving the coal bus at large, right? So the big conversation right now, these data centers, and in my opinion, that look, if we want these data centers, we need to look at kind of what Sweden's doing right now. You put them inside those mountains where they're cool, they can stay cool. You don't need as much water to run them. You're not robbing the rest of the resources from the Eastern Kentuckians there, or maybe on top of those strip mines and get the water up there to them. But my opinion is that the success of Eastern Kentucky is going to come through tourism, bringing some of that Hatfield McCoy stuff from the Virginias over west into Kentucky, expanding that, getting more amenities, bringing more jobs to those people, and allowing them to share their natural beautifications of that area of our state with the rest of the nation. Hunting lotteries, things like that, populate that place, get rid of the kudzu, and get back to a service-driven industry or a hospitality-driven industry that would help them remain, economically sound.
All right, that's good. We'll move on to the next question. And this one's about disaster recovery and federal aid. In 2025, Kentucky took 2 federal major disaster declarations, one for the April storms and flooding that hit Meade County and 30 other plus counties, and one for May tornadoes across Western Kentucky. As a U.S. Senator, how do you see your role in disaster recovery, working with FEMA, the White House, and your counterparts in the House so that Kentuckians in the hardest hit places actually get the help they're owed or need?
That's also a good question. So from the Senate side, ultimately, what the U.S. Senator could do would be, again, that constituent service, making sure that those agencies are actually doing what's been promised. Because look, the House through the Appropriations Committee is who sets that money aside for those things when they pass a budget, making sure that that disaster relief is available to the nation. And so from the Senate side, it would be basically advocacy. Having Senate hearings, making sure that as these things take place, that our response meets the issue of the moment, and that we are getting those resources to those people based on the budget that's available to those issues. And of course, having a governor who's going to request those services from DC, and making sure he's aligned with his work and looking after the people there as kind of the CEO of the state, rather, and working with that individual directly to make sure that appropriated money that's been funded by the House is actually being given and used properly, so that we can have plenty left over if another one comes by 6 or 7 months later,
Okay. Next question is about Fort Knox and the military. Fort Knox is the largest employer in our region here in Hardin County and sits right in Hardin County's backyard, headquarters for Army Human Resource Command, and one of the places that shapes Kentucky's economy every day. Federal military spending, installation, infrastructure, and support for military families all run through Washington. What's your approach to make sure Fort Knox and the family stationed there stay supported in the federal budget process?
Sure. Another kind of budgetary thing that really kind of originates in the House. So on the Senate side, it is just to ensure that those bills aren't bloated with pork that doesn't serve the people. Fort Knox is a very important base to a lot of people, especially with that HRC being there, doing so much work. Which, interestingly enough, the aviation side of Fort Knox right now is going through turmoil as lots of people get booted from that place. And actually, it's in reference to the very helicopter that I service today on the civilian side, which is the Black Hawk. I mean, look, the Army's trying to get rid of that. They're going to the V-280 Valor, which is a Bell tilt rotor program. And you're talking about billions of dollars, not just in procuring the actual product of the airframe and all of its components, but you're talking about training, you're talking about tooling. And you have to ask the question, was that the smart move? I mean, look, the UH-60 Black Hawk has been in existence for nearly 50 years and has been vital and is one of the most safest helicopters that exist today, and has saved so many people and been such a good service to rescue missions, insertion, extraction, things like that we need for national defense and emergency relief. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a fishy thing to try to replace a sound helicopter that can just be upgraded for a lot less money. So it's things like that, understanding what's going on in those bills and making sure that when they're getting voted on, the things that are inside of those packages are actually serving the people of those communities. And it's not going to trample the surrounding area or ruin kind of that local area,
This is your last question. And after the last question, I'll do my closing, and then I'll give you 90 seconds to do a little elevator pitch why people should vote for you. And then we'll be done. The U.S. Senate is a 100-member body where almost nothing passes without 60 votes. How do you build working relationships across the aisle and with Kentucky's other senator, whose approach may be different from yours, especially when you disagree on policy or substance?
Well, look, like I said earlier, I mean, we're going to have to depend on some of these candidates coming out of the woodwork that are, going to come up there to represent their people. But look, I can work with Rand Paul. I can work with most anybody that's there right now. What I don't like is this idea of grifting the American people and throwing out these little low-hanging fruits to make people think that we're winning in these crazy bills that do absolutely nothing for the people. They rattle the cages over them. They put all this stuff in them, and they say, vote for these 100 items in this one bill, although the most important part is one specific line item of whether we're going to fund the government or not, right? Which, in my opinion, I think we need to look at this idea of, and there's several ways to tackle this, is in these moments where we can't agree, we need to have some fallback to be able to fund our federal government at the minimalistic level. Like, look, keep our government open, make sure our people are getting paid who are within the government, whether that's the U.S. Armed Forces, whether that's, and I'm not a fan of the TSA, but the TSA employees, DHS, all these people that work for these three-letter agencies, even the contractors. I mean, look, you're taking food off of people's table. So we have to find a way to make sure that those people have continued relief, while people who are up there disagreeing on things that are really just petty in nature and do not serve the people. So for me, I can work with anybody. If it makes good common sense, look, we'll have an in-depth, good conversation about it. We'll give her a good college try to get her passed. And, if not, we've got to discuss the matter. You got to have a standing filibuster. You can't just filibuster this thing and then walk home and go get paid as a congressman or a U.S. senator. I think once you walk out of those chambers and you filibuster that item, if you're not there willing to debate it, your pay should be stopped as just as much as the rest of everything you're shutting down.
All right, Mike. Well, we do thank you for being part of the Hardin Local Election Marathon. We'll drop where to learn more, enter in the comment below those live streams so anyone watching can find you. Coming up next, right after you get off at 1:30, is Jason Buckles. It'll be right on this stream. We're not going to switch streams. And he's a candidate for Hardin County Magistrate District 6. So stay with us. And one more thank you to our sponsors, the Plumbing Doctor at 765 Plum and Corey at Omni Design Group, 270-769-8339. Now, with that said, Michael, give us your best elevator pitch for why people should vote for you. You got 90 seconds.
Sure. Look, I'm just like these folks that are watching this. I'm a regular everyday guy, blessed with the opportunity to create my own business and do what I enjoy doing. A guy who just wanted to be left alone, and the federal government basically drew me into this thing. So that's why I'm here. I think we have to, basically cut this foreign aid. We need to get rid of these judges, these rogue judges, because look, you pick your controversy, right? Whether it's foreign aid, whether it's hemp industry, whether it's abortion. Look, you can pass all the legislation you want, but if it remains a controversy, it goes to the court of law. If you don't have people in there with a constitutional mind to address these issues as appropriate, based on your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you do not have a country. You've got to get these elections fixed. We've got to make sure they're secure. Luckily, in Kentucky, IDs are already required, but we do have to do that nationwide. It has to be a smart bill. It has to be sound, and it has to be not reactionary, but proactive in preventing fraud. And of course, dead voters and people who've moved out of the state and all of those things. So look, we're on a grassroots campaign. We have a strong movement growing. We've built our own base in this thing. And I would be honored by any support that you'd be willing to give us on May 19th and the week leading up to that by early voting, and then sending those absentee ballots in as that time comes around, and you have the excuse to do so. Phil, thank you for your time. I appreciate your audience. And to Hardin County, thank you for standing with a native of your county and giving me the opportunity to tell you what I'd like to do for you in Washington, D.C.
Well, we thank you for joining us and wish you the best. And
Thanks, Phil.
Give us your updates whenever you have them. We'll talk to you later.
Later, bud.
Later.